Imagine you had the choice between $3 million instantly or a penny. But its value will double every day for 31 days. Almost everyone chooses cash. But if you are patient enough to go through 31 days, that small coin will turn into more than $10 million. That simple story is more than a math game, it is a test of faith and patience. In a fast-paced world, where everyone wants instant results, few people have the patience to wait until day 31. The book you are about to read is not a soundtrack of cliched advice, but an unconventional roadmap. Instead of talking about giant leaps, it emphasizes small, sometimes invisible, but persistent steps. It tells that success lies not in brief moments of brilliance but in a series of actions repeated to the point of boredom. I remember wondering, if everyone knows how important habits are, why do so many still fall behind? And then I realized, it's because they're so small that we often take them for granted. We think skipping a workout won't hurt, eating an extra piece of cake won't hurt, putting off a task won't make a big difference. But it is those same dust particles, repeated day after day, that paint a completely different picture of life. So instead of asking what you want to achieve next year, I want to ask a more thorny question. What are you secretly accumulating every day and where is it taking you? This book does not promise a smooth road. It's like pushing a giant wheel, heavy and tiring at first, making you want to give up. But if you are patient, at some point the wheels will turn and you will be surprised to find yourself going much further than you ever imagined. The story of the compound effect is not only a philosophy but also a mirror. It forces us to look at ourselves from our most unconscious choices. Who do we let into our lives? What do we let into our minds, and what habits do we indulge in? There are no miracles, no shortcuts, just small but persistent accumulations that create the extraordinary. As I opened this book, I wondered if I had the courage to look directly at the smallest details in life, the things I had long taken for granted. And you, do you dare to look at yourself with that question? Right now, and before going into the book review, we encourage listeners to buy and read it to fully experience the book's content. Because only when you read this book will you understand the issues I am talking about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now let's start reviewing this book with me. From a young age I knew I wasn't the fastest, the smartest, or the most popular in the crowd. But I also soon realized a truth that few people dare to accept. Sometimes speed is not as important as who has the guts to go all the way. The story of the tortoise and the hare still resonates in my memory as a reminder. I chose to be a turtle, and that choice shaped everything that followed. My childhood mornings had no chirping birds or gentle alarm clocks. I woke up to the sound of weights pounding in the gar. My father, a man as tough as steel, often starts his day with sweat and steel clanging against the wall. Scribbled letters in paint are painless and ineffective. That's not a slogan but a rule of survival in this house. He does not indulge, there is no room for excuses, bleeding, broken bones are okay, the rest is not. I learned to take care of myself early, mowing the lawn, washing dishes, gardening, cleaning, and more importantly finishing chores, and if I did them well, I could get ice cream. Failure will only result in a cold look and silence under that stern hand. I learned the most important thing is not to be the best. But if you are willing to work 3 or 4 times as hard as others, the final result will still be on your side. If you can't throw the ball with your right hand, tie your hand. Practice for hours with your left hand. If you're not good at math, you'll struggle all summer with books. The difference comes from discipline, not talent. By the age of 12, I was used to the demanding schedule of an executive. While my friends were playing, I was being stuffed with discipline and responsibility. I hated it then. But later I understood that it was the greatest gift my father left me. He didn't give me comfort, he gave me advantage. Each small step, each boring day has opened up milestones that many people are surprised by. 18 years old, I was making six figures, 24 years old. Income over $1 million per year. At 27 years old, the company I run has a revenue of $50 million. To some it may seem like success comes in one fell swoop, but I know it's all the result of thousands of unseen days. That is the principle that has been quietly operating in my life. Cumulative effect. The little things repeated over and over again are almost invisible. If maintained long enough it will make a huge difference. But the paradox is that it is because it is so small that most people do not believe it. They don't have the patience to wait for the snowball to roll downhill, so they give up before seeing any change. I have seen many people like that. They exercise for a week and then quit because they don't see any weight loss. They saved for a few months and then spent it all because they thought it was not worth it. They read books for a few days and then stop because they don't see any improvement in their intelligence. Little do they know that those small actions, if continued, will one day explode like a coin that doubles in value every day it succeeds. For me it is not a magic secret or a stroke of luck. It simply keeps things so mundane that the repetition sounds boring. But it is in that boredom that power is accumulated, and once the breaking point comes, no one can stop it. Imagine you are faced with two choices. One is $3 million in cash immediately. Two is a small coin, but its value will double every day. Within 31 days, almost all of them chose the huge amount. Because the human eye only believes in what is immediately present, like a coin. After 5 days it is only worth 16 cents. After 10 days it has just risen to over $5. By the 20th, the value was just over 5,000, too small compared to the initial 3 million. The person holding 3 million celebrates, while the person holding the coin is considered a fool. But just wait patiently until the last day, the value will exceed 10 million, 3 times the amount of money that seemed more certain. The lesson behind this game is that success does not belong to those who are eager for quick wins but to those who have the courage to go to the end of patience. Every cumulative action takes time to explode if time is given. All those previous days of perseverance instantly became meaningless. I remember the story of 3 friends. They are all the same at the starting line, with equal income. Stable family, normal health. The first person still keeps the familiar rhythm of life, without changing anything. The second person decided to make a small adjustment, cutting out 125 calories. Every day, walk a few more steps, read 10 pages of a book before going to bed. The third person added more bad habits, ate a little more, drank more alcohol, watched more TV. The first month, all 3 were almost indistinguishable. A year later, no one has noticed any significant change. But 2.5 years later, the signs began to appear. The second person is lighter, healthier, richer in knowledge and energy. The relationship between husband and wife is also warmer. The third person is heavy. Sluggish, work stagnant, love life stressful, and the first person stagnant. Watching friends go in opposite directions, after 31 months, the distance becomes a chasm. It all comes down to small, repetitive choices that no one initially takes seriously. The cumulative effect is like ripples spreading out from a pebble dropped into a pond. A single, seemingly harmless action can set off a chain reaction. Eating a few more cakes makes the body heavy, the next morning sluggish, work delayed, get complained, bad mood, bring home grumpiness, broken relationships. A negative spiral starts with a piece of cake. Conversely, a good choice can have the same ripple effect. A smile to a stranger, a concentration on reading a few pages of a book, or a simple compliment to a loved one. The most dangerous is the slow speed, like a frog sitting in a pot, the water gradually warming up. We often do not realize we are being boiled. The retreat comes little by little, so few people are alert. And when you realize the distance is too far to easily turn back. The modern world makes people more vulnerable. Ads promise perfect body in 30 days, get rich quick in a few months. The magic secret: in a short course, people run after instant results, and when they don't get them, they give up, find a new formula and get disappointed again. While the real secret never changes, success comes from baby steps. Repetitive, patient to the point of boredom. I have lived by this truth and seen it repeated in countless stories around me. The difference between success and failure is not luck, not talent, but who is consistent enough to keep the little things going for the long haul, and that consistency over time will blossom into unexpected results. Every result in my life started from a small moment that at first seemed insignificant. It's not the grand decisions but the seemingly harmless choices of eating an extra piece of cake, postponing reading tonight, skipping compliments for the gods. These dust particles accumulate into mountains, these tiny streams form rivers and then sweep away an entire life without us even realizing it. I used to believe that success or failure came from big bumps, events that weighed like an elephant. But it turned out it was the mosquitoes that bit me to death. No one falls by a single event but by hundreds of repeated actions. Small habits that seem harmless. Every random snap of the fingers, every time I allow myself to be lazy, is like a needle prick that slowly saps my will. The most dangerous thing is that most of the time we are not sober when we make decisions. We act like sleepwalkers, programmed by echoes of the past, by habits nurtured by the environment, by culture instilled from childhood. I think I'm free. But in fact we are just sliding along the invisible thread of memory and surrounding influences. And then when we look back, the road has led to a place we never intended to go to. I have been through that in marriage. There are days when I find myself staring at the negative. Then the frustration grew. Then I tried an experiment every night. I write down in a small notebook one thing I am grateful for about my partner. Just one sentence is sometimes very ordinary. The way she takes care of a meal, the patience she has when talking to her child, or the way her eyes follow me when I leave the house. I did this for a whole year, without missing a day. When I gave her the book, I felt tears rolling down my face, but the biggest change happened in me. Forcing myself to find something to be grateful for each day has helped me stop obsessing over my flaws and start looking at the bright spots. I realized that love is not a passing breeze but the result of paying attention in the right place, regularly and persistently. Perspective changes, behavior changes, and ultimately results change. That's how I learned the lesson of responsibility at a young age. I often wait for justice. I do half, the other side also has to do half. But the reality is harsher. If I want a lasting relationship, if I want a life on the right track, I have to choose it. Not 50, not 80-20 but 100. I take full responsibility, expecting nothing in return. Only then will I be truly free. Because when we wait for others to change, we give them our power. When we accept responsibility, we hold the keys to our own lives. If I'm late for work, it's not the traffic jam's fault, it's my fault for not preparing earlier. If the work fails, it is not the colleague's fault but my fault for not checking through if the relationship is strained. It's not because the other person is too difficult, but because I haven't learned to behave differently. Taking all the responsibility means there is nowhere to hide. But at the same time it also means I can change anything. Someone once asked me, "Why are you so lucky?" That question made me laugh. Luck is not a gift that falls from the sky, it is an equation that can be explained. Luck is preparation plus attitude plus opportunity plus action. Preparation is the part few want to do. Practice quietly when nothing is happening. Attitude is the filter we wear over our eyes. The pessimist never sees an opportunity. People with faith see seeds of potential everywhere. Chance is something we do not control. But it's always around, whether we realize it or not. But action is what determines everything. I have seen countless people recognize opportunities but pass them by because of fear, because of laziness, because of waiting for perfect conditions. The difference between those who succeed and those who miss out is in jumping into action when opportunity presents itself. I also fell hard. A business deal in the early 2000s taught me the price of carelessness. I put my efforts and capital into a new project, trusting my partner. No careful assessment, no dare to look closely. As a result, more than $330,000 disappeared. Many people advised me to sue, demand compensation, and blame others. But I know clearly, I was the one who chose to cooperate without checking. If I had chosen, I would have taken the risk instead of wallowing in bitterness. I decided to consider it as tuition for a special university, VA University. From then on I always remembered the principle, don't just expect, check. I also discovered a secret weapon so simple that most overlook it. Follow up, whatever is recorded will become more real, clearer. To improve your health, write down everything you eat. Want financial discipline, record every penny spent. This small action forces us to be conscious, and consciousness is the starting point of change. I have tasted the pain of lack of control after a busy year at work. I got a tax bill of over $100,000. Where did the money go? I do not know. It flows like water, leaving me in confusion. The shock forced me to take a notebook and record every expense for 30 days, from a quick cup of coffee, a meal out, to an impulse purchase. Everything is recorded for just 1 month. The truth emerged that it was my unconscious spending that was eating away at my finances. My awareness changed, my behavior changed, and from there I regained discipline. The tracking habit not only saved me financially, it spilled over into other areas. From my training regimen to how I spend my time, elite athletes never skimp on keeping track of their metrics. They know that if you don't measure, you can't control. Same goes for everyday life. Recording turns the vague into the concrete. And only that specific thing can be adjusted. The key is to not start big, just track a single habit for a week, pick something that has a big impact like spending, eating, or screen time. That simplicity is the advantage. When we see the truth clearly, motivation will arise automatically. Along with other changes, people are often busy looking for magic tricks. While the key lies in the P movements. Writing down what we do during the day sounds so mundane, but it is the path to regaining control. And when control is in your hands, every small choice will gradually shape a different future. I used to sit alone with a blank sheet of paper. The 3 most important goals didn't come as easily as I thought. Having to write them down, I realized that many of the things I tell myself every day are actually just vague. Next, I listed the habits that were pulling me off track. The list was longer than I expected. When I compare, I see clearly that the words I say about what I want and my actual daily behavior are sometimes completely opposite. Behavior of not lying. It was that collision that made me understand that I wanted to change. Can't stop at just desire. I had to root out bad habits. Every habit has a trigger point. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's a place, a time, or a vague feeling. As if just entering the familiar kitchen, my hand automatically reached for the can of soda I wanted to control. First find the firing pin and then clean up. I can't expect to quit smoking while keeping a whole pack of cigarettes in my drawer. It's impossible to cut down on snacking when the fridge is always full of candy. I learned to clear the space around me, removing anything that could drag me back into my old groove. The environment is the extension of the will. If the environment is full of temptations, the willpower will be exhausted. But cleaning is not enough. The brain is addicted to pleasure, so if it is taken away without being replaced, it will rebel. I practice swapping. Instead of a strong cup of coffee with sugar, I tried a glass of cool water. Instead of sitting for hours in front of a mindless screen, I choose a light book in my backpack. The replacement doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to feel like I'm not losing, but exchanging. Of course, not all habits are easy to break. There are wrinkles so deep that a surgical knife cannot cut them directly. I learned to progress gradually, having the dose and then reducing it again. It takes time for my body and mind to adjust, and each small step is another proof that I am still in control. But sometimes shock therapy is more effective. One time I decided to completely cut out a habit that had been tormenting me for too long. I jumped into the cold water instead of waiting, in pain and shivering. But it is that very decisiveness that liberates. There are things that are non-negotiable, only destroyable. I also set myself another test. Try the 30-day habit challenge, and I chose a seemingly harmless habit. A habit that many people consider normal entertainment and force themselves to stop for a month. The results revealed that I was more dependent than I thought. That test made me wary. Because if a small pleasure can dominate my mind so strongly, then I am living by its control and not by my will. Step by step, I untied old chains, space gradually became more open, schedule became more streamlined, relationships were refined, and I began to feel lighter. As if removing layers of moldy cloak that have been on for too long. And it was in the space that opened up that I knew I was ready to plant the seeds for new habits after I had cleared and unpacked. It is essential to plant. Leaving it bare will allow weeds to grow back. I started by designing it to be easy for me to win. I put the book on the table next to the bed. So that I can't help but see them when I wake up, I leave my gym shoes by the door. Just slip on your shoes and step out. I turned off my phone notifications and put it in another room so I wouldn't be dragged away by Dung's voice. When good becomes easy and bad becomes difficult, the will does not suffer too much. I also realized that change shouldn't just mean cutting. Instead, think about adding. I added healthy things to my diet and they gradually pushed the unhealthy ones out. I add a short reading session to my schedule every day. And that automatically takes away the mindless screen time and adds in the good stuff. Instead of trying to forcefully cut off the old, it turns out to be gentler. There is another way to tie yourself up. Public commitment. I used to write on the board in the office the target I was pursuing so that anyone who passed by could see it. Feeling like you're blinded by other people's eyes. But it is necessary pressure. No one wants to be a talker. Public commitment makes accountability tangible and inescapable. I also learned to rely on others. An ally, a companion makes the journey less lonely. Every week we call each other to tell each other what we did and where we went wrong. That transparency helps both of them not give up easily. Sometimes we even turn it into a game. Whoever finishes first wins, whoever misses has to suffer a small penalty. The competitive spirit turns boring days into exciting races. Equally important is celebration. Not meaningless celebration but purposeful celebration. When I hit a milestone, I reward myself with something small, a book I've been looking forward to, a long walk, or a simple meal at my favorite place. The reward reminds me that progress is worth celebrating. Without self-motivation, willpower will wear down and new habits won't stick. I started to reconstruct the two ends of my day. In the morning I spend half an hour reading and then go into 90 minutes of deep work, where there are no phones, no emails, just my most important project. Every day, I choose one task of certain value to complete, calling it the most important thing. The night before I go to bed, I sit down, write down what I did, how I felt, and clear my mind. Sleep was then no longer disturbed. Which becomes the start for tomorrow. Change is not easy, but that is its advantage. Because most give up halfway, only the steadfast few reap the rewards. The difficulty is the protective fence, preventing superficial people from getting in. Those who are patient will have a wide gap to break through. I also discovered the truth about the brain. Every habit is a neural groove carved by repetition, the more you do it. The groove is deeper. If you want to change, you have to stop focusing on the old groove so that it weakens. At the same time, practice the new groove with steady action. It's rough at first, but eventually the road becomes a path. Looking back, I always come back to 3 questions. Good habits are nurturing me. What bad habits are holding me back? And what new habits do I need to build? Right now, I dig into why I want it. Not to write slogans but to create a strong enough motivation. The clearer and more specific the goal, the easier it is to turn into action. Every great journey begins with small steps repeated. But that seemingly trivial thing is the biggest paradox that too many people overlook because it is so simple. And it is in that simplicity that lasting change is sown. There is one image I will never forget of a giant will lying still at first. To make it roll, I had to use all my strength, sweat poured out, every muscle was tense, each push only moved a few centimeters, feeling almost helpless. But then after the 10th, 20th time, the will started to use itself, and at some point it rolled automatically, faster, lighter, without me having to exert as much effort as before. Life works the same way. Every change starts with terrible pressure. Starting is always the most painful part because the results are nowhere to be seen, just heaviness and frustration. But if we persevere, there will come a point where inertia itself will lift us up. I call that moment bitch-mo. Great momentum makes everything else easier. I have seen clearly in sports the athletes I know. At first the training was nothing but torture. Cold mornings still have to run. Loose muscles still have to lift. But then one day they enter a strange state that people call zo. In that state, every movement flows as if it were pre-written in the body. Every hit, throw, run is perfectly timed. They no longer have to struggle but as if guided by an invisible force to reach it. The price is months and years of boredom, but once momentum builds, the results explode. I apply that principle to my daily life by building core habits. Early in the morning I designate a fixed time to read for half an hour and then do 90 minutes of deep work during that time. No phone calls, no emails, just the most important thing of the day. This doesn't come from inspiration, it comes from discipline. At night I repeat a reverse ritual, sitting down and writing down what I have done, thinking about what I have not done, and clearing my mind. These 2 ends of the day are like the spine of a book, keeping the whole content of life intact. Emotions can change, excitement can rise and fall. But this schedule anchors me so the momentum doesn't get cut off. The strange thing is that the more you do things, the easier they get. At first, I struggled to wake up early, hitting the alarm clock over and over again, forcing myself out of bed. But after a few weeks, the body wakes up before the bell rings. When I quit, I feel like I'm missing out as if I've gotten used to the flow. That's when I knew Big Mo had appeared. It was like a river. Once it flows, I just go with the flow, no more climbing the drum. I'm beginning to understand why most people give up. They stopped as soon as the wheel moved. They don't have the patience to wait for inertia to take over. That heavy and boring stage is the barrier that filters people, and the paradox lies in if you can endure it. We will enter a world where effort becomes joy. But if you give up, all your previous efforts will be in vain. And I realize that maintaining momentum is harder than creating momentum. The wheel was rolling, but if I stopped pushing it, it would slow down. At first it is slow and difficult to notice. Then suddenly stood still. And when I want to restart, I have to go back to the starting point. Use all strength, even more than before, to move each inch. The price of giving up is always more expensive than we think. I've been there before. There was a time when I was so complacent with my results that I let my schedule go, skipped a few days of training, and allowed myself to let go. It seemed fine at first, but after just a week, things started to fall apart, habits were broken, and motivation cooled. And the wheel in me stopped. At that moment, regret flooded back because I understood that it would take months to regain what was lost in just a few days. Therefore, maintenance is more important than initiation. People are often excited about starting, but the real secret is never to start over again, to keep going. Even small steps are much easier than giving up and trying to start over. I often take the simple example of morning exercise first thing in the morning. It is a war with yourself. Every morning is a negotiation between sleeping in or doing homework. But after a few weeks the balance tilted to one side. The body automatically demands movement. And if I don't exercise, I feel lacking, I feel uncomfortable. At that time habit has transformed into instinct. Big more is here. That's why I always emphasize. Designed to have no gaps. Morning and evening schedules are like two iron axes. Keep the wheels turning day in and day out. Sometimes I lose interest, sometimes I get tired. But thanks to the schedule, I kept going. Emotions betray, and habits save. Momentum not only takes us far but also gives us confidence. Once I found myself able to maintain it for a few weeks, a few months, I began to believe that I could continue for years. That belief becomes a new motivation. I no longer think about trying every day but only think about not betraying the inertia that has been built. But I'm also cautious because big MO isn't permanent. It needs to be nurtured with consistency. Losing momentum is as easy as letting go. But to get it back, we have to pay the price. I have seen many people drop out at the top. They think they are invincible, stop to rest and then lose everything. The only way is to keep going, don't let the wheel stop. When inertia is on your side, effort is no longer a burden but becomes an automatic force that carries you far. Then change is no longer a chore but a natural flow, flowing forever, as long as I keep it alive. It took me years to understand that no one lives completely free. Every decision that seems to come from the ego is shaped by three circles surrounding what I let into the minds of the people I am closest to and the space in which I exist. If not guarded carefully, these three rings will rewrite my life story in ways I would not choose. First is the gate of the mind. I used to think that a few hours of watching the news, a little time surfing social media wouldn't hurt anything. But when I added it all up, I was shocked to realize that every year I wasted more than 1,700 hours in front of the screen, equivalent to nearly 5 hours a day. And more importantly, those hours not only took away my time but also filled my head with countless distorted images of the world. Tragedies, thrillers. The brain has evolved to detect danger, so when it is constantly flooded with negative information, it defaults to operating with anxiety and deprivation. I began to see life through the lens of fear. Even though it wasn't that bad, that's when I put myself on a new diet. Media diet. I strictly filter what is allowed into my mind. I turned off the evening news. Instead, there are a few pages of books. I stopped following toxic sources and replaced them with inspirational ones like changing my menu. At first I craved the old taste but gradually I found myself feeling healthier and more alert. Then comes the second circle of influence, the people around me. It is said that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. It sounds cliché but I tested it and found it to be brutally true. I sat down and wrote down the names of the 5 people I spent the most time with, listing each of their characteristics. Then I asked myself, if I become their average version, is that the future I want? The results gave me chills. There were some easygoing, pessimistic people on that list, and I found myself saying the same things, thinking the same things, the influence not being loud but seeping through like water dripping through a wall. I understood that if I wanted to go far, I had to be strong with my closest relationships. I started to categorize people whose energy was toxic. I had to cut them off completely. People who aren't bad but make me stagnate, I limit the time I spend with them, and I proactively seek out people with higher standards so my average is pulled up, not pulled down. It's not easy to say no to someone you used to love, but I know it's the necessary choice. Because I don't want my life written in someone else's voice. Every day I become more aware of these two circles. What goes into your head and who stands next to you. They decide my direction. More than I ever realized. The last circle. The most elusive yet most pervasive is the environment. I used to think willpower was enough. But the space around us is like gravity, we can resist it for a moment. But if you live long enough, it will drag you down. I remember the first time I came to a small coastal town where the houses facing the sea were large and modern. Where people drive luxury cars that I used to only see in magazines. Just standing there for one session, my standards changed. I began to imagine that I could live like that too. That it is not a pipe dream. The environment not only surrounds us, it silently expands or narrows our vision of ourselves. Sometimes the environment is very small things. The closets are stuffed with old things, the garage is full of dust, every unfinished object is a promise hanging in the balance. Energy drain, I call it psychological sensing. Clearing them out not only frees up physical space but also frees up the mind. Putting away a broken box is sometimes more relieving than a vacation. I also learned a harsh principle. Life will treat me exactly as I accept. If I allow a cluttered space, I'm sending the message that I accept mediocrity. If I allow a toxic relationship to persist, I'm sending the message that I accept being treated that way. Standards are never set by others. It starts with what I tolerate. When it comes to staying strong, I understand that I can't rely on willpower alone. I have to design the environment to be its ally. I tidy up my desk, leaving only the essentials. I book my workouts like an appointment that cannot be cancelled. I choose friends not for fun but to hold myself to high standards. The environment is like a skeleton that keeps me upright when my spirit wants to collapse. Finally, I combined all three circles into a concrete movement. I reevaluate all the input I hear and read. I replace it with mind nourishment. I go back through the list of people I'm most attached to and then categorize them clearly, cut them out, limit them, or expand them. And I clean up not only the trash in my room but also the unfinished work and unfulfilled promises. In relationships that are not yet final, each step is like clearing the way to bigger. The momentum I worked so hard to build can run smoothly. When all three circles are under control, I no longer feel like I have to struggle every day. Instead, I was supported by an undercurrent, a nurturing environment, motivating friends, and what I put into my head became pure fuel. I realized that influence is never out of reach, it's within reach. As long as I dare to select, dare to cut, dare to raise the standard. And when I take the initiative to do that, life is no longer written by others, but by each word. I picked up the pen and wrote again. There is a slope in Soldas that I have tried to conquer many times. Every time I cycled to the bottom of the hill, I knew I was going to face a real battle. The first few hundred meters, the body still has enough strength, heart rate increases, sweat appears, but the higher the altitude. Every muscle started screaming, my breath was on fire and 1,000 excuses were ringing in my head. Just take a break, come back tomorrow. Who blames? That was the moment of truth. Not when it first starts, but when the pain has taken hold, when both reason and emotion tell the goat to give up. In those moments, my true self is revealed. I can stop and accept that I am just like everyone else. Or I could pedal one more lap, and then another until I reached the top. The paradox is that most victories come not from the long road ahead but from the brief moment we choose to continue when everything inside us demands to stop. I still remember a cold, rainy day in Bos-des-Len, a marathon runner who had prepared for years for the race, but in the decisive race, she found herself unable to continue. Body limp, rain splashed on face, each gust of wind whipped like a whip. She was about to give up but chose the opposite, rushing forward to help her friend keep the pace. It was that decision that made her cross the line, entering a completely different state from the person who almost gave up. She turned the tables and finished first. It was not just a sporting victory but a demonstration of the law. The moment we take another step, the whole trajectory changes. Acceleration is not a fluke. It doesn't come from a sudden burst of inspiration but from a foundation that has been built over years, from every boring practice session, every little habit, every discipline. All of them build up into momentum. And when the moment comes, just one push of the accelerator beyond the usual standard, the results will explode exponentially. I have seen this even in my day job, some days making sales calls. After the first 10 calls, I wanted to stop. But one more shot is often the one that makes the difference. There were times when I intended to finish work early but chose to stay an extra 20 minutes. And it was that short period of time that brought about the idea that changed the entire project. Not always, but when you stay patient and disciplined and dare to push past the quitting threshold, golden moments will appear. That's the essence of acceleration, the synergy of preparation, persistence, and timely decision-making. It's like a fire that has been kindled for a long time, and when you fan it a little more it flares up into a fire. No one sees the silent process, only the explosive moment, and calls it luck. But I know luck is just the name outsiders give to tireless perseverance in life. Everyone has their moments of truth. It could be when we are about to hang up after dozens of unsuccessful calls but tell ourselves, just one more. That may be when a conversation with a loved one is about to slip into silence. But we decide to open up one more honest sentence, or that's when we've finished the practice. But choose to do a few more moves. Those little extras sound small. But it is they that distinguish the ordinary from the extraordinary. I gradually learned to recognize and capture those moments. I call them the nodal points that don't always ring alarm bells. But if we are awake enough, we will feel our heart rate increase. The whisper in my head says, just give it a rest. It was then, instead of keeping a safe pace, I chose to step on the gas, not necessarily double it, just beyond the normal, and strangely enough, the result is not just a little bit better but opens up a whole new level. I started to make this principle a habit. Every day I find 3 places to make a little extra. 3 places to exceed expectations, do more than is expected, and 3 unexpected behaviors. Create moments that surprise even me. I once sent a detailed thank you to a colleague that only needed a polite greeting, and the result was a much stronger working relationship. Sometimes I stay a few minutes after a meeting, ask a question that no one else has thought of, and that idea opens up a new direction. I realize that extraordinary is not a magical leap but just ordinary plus a little extra, very little but regularly and repeatedly at important points. Like a carver does not need a big hammer, just needs the right hits to turn a rough stone into a masterpiece. Acceleration also requires me to surpass my own expectations many times. I think this is enough, but I ask myself, if I want to surprise myself, what more will I do? That question makes me constantly reinvent myself, constantly raise my standards, and every time I exceed expectations, I find myself becoming different, stronger, more creative, and freer. Once you get into the swing of things, pressing the accelerator at the right time becomes less of a struggle and more of a joy. Because I know that just by moving up a notch, the ripple effect throughout the entire system results from a few extra minutes of practice. Energy spills over into work from an extra call, income increases, confidence is strengthened, and the entire trajectory of life is transformed. I conclude this journey with 3 simple commitments. Every day I will find a way to do extra in one area. I will choose a place to exceed expectations, and I will make a surprise move to change the atmosphere around me. 3 little things. But they were the springboards that got me into the acceleration zone where results stopped being incremental and exploded. Beyond what I ever thought was the limit. The journey I just shared is not a collection of shiny formulas but small steps, sometimes boring but enough to shape a lifetime. From tiny coins that double in value every day to simple habits like recording your expenses. All of which raises a big question for you in your daily life. What are you repeating, and whether it is getting you where you want to go or pulling you away? The most important lesson I learned is that change isn't always loud. It happens silently in seemingly innocuous choices about how we handle moments of wanting to give up and in who we allow in. What gets into your circle of influence? That accumulation, if intentional, will become cumulative power. If you let go, it will turn into a pulling force. I leave you here. But I hope that from tomorrow you will try to observe yourself again. What is a behavior you want to change? What is a habit you need to sow? What is an influence you need to courageously eliminate? Don't wait for a big event. Let's start with a small detail. Thank you for being with me on this journey. Ask yourself if you dare to let a small seed today become a forest for the future. And now book says goodbye and